April 27th, 2011, less than 1 month before the devastating Joplin tornado, the small towns of Ruth and Arab, Alabama, were hit by an EF4. 5 people perished that day. And those deaths became part of a series of events that went far beyond the traditional near-death experience.
The belief of many scientists, of many people who have had NDEs, is that our energy goes on after we die. It doesn't get destroyed. We just go on in a different form. It's called non-local consciousness. Local consciousness is the here and now, in this body, in your life.
A little girl named Ari Hallmark claims to have had such experiences.
She's gone up there and she went.
But what makes her case unique is these experiences started 6 months before the storm.
About 6 months before the tornado came, Ari came to school and she was very upset. She had had a dream that her mom and dad had passed away.
I started having really bad dreams that they were going to die, and it made me start crying at school and stuff.
For weeks, she was crying every single day, and she would tell me day after day, I just can't get those dreams out of my head.
She kept trying to tell everybody that they were going to die and that she needed to spend time with them. She told teachers, she told her mom and dad, she told the principal, she told her counselor, and they all told her no, that just didn't happen. And if one parent died, the other one would take care of, and she would not relent. She said, but both of them are going to die.
I heard of an experience of a young child who had a premonition that her parents were going to die a few months before the event actually took place. And the child kept having dreams about this and reporting it to the parents. Is it a premonition? Is it the child's anxiety? You know, oftentimes children have dreams that their parents are going to die. It's because of anxiety. But the nature of a premonition or an intuitive dream is that it can be very clear, very crisp, almost detached feeling that's associated with an accurate intuition.
For 6 months, everyone reassured Ari that her dreams wouldn't come true. But then, they did.
A rotation has been spotted. There could be a tornado at any moment, so take cover. This whole line is going to hit Huntsville and Birmingham really hard out.
I was at school. They're like, we've got severe weather and we need to go home. So my mom and dad always wanted to be the first ones in line to pick me up. So I was like one of the first people to go home.
Ari and her parents, Jennifer and Shane, rushed to the house that Shane had just finished building 10 days earlier. But as the tornado approached, Shane felt that they should check on his parents, who were taking care of Ari's 17-month-old twin cousins, Julie and Jaden.
We get there and the tornado's already in the backyard. And my mom's carrying me and we're just trying to get into the house as fast as we can. And we got in there right as it hit.
Tornadic winds up to 200 miles per hour hit Ari's grandparents' house. The home was completely destroyed, and Ari was thrown over 200 yards, landing in a neighbor's yard.
Well, when I found Ari, she didn't have a whole lot of blood on her, and her hair was all messed up and everything. I didn't recognize her right off the bat. When I seen the house over there, I didn't think we'd find anybody alive. It just looked like a bomb went off.
Coming up,
The dreams that she had had for so many weeks had really happened.
I believe that I went to heaven after the tornado. I saw Jesus and all the family that passed away.
On April 27, 2011, an EF4 tornado tore through the small towns of Ruth and Arab, Alabama. Prior to the killer storm, 6-year-old Ari Hallmark had been haunted by premonitions of her parents' death. As the tornado bore down on her grandparents' home, Ari's parents, Shane and Jennifer, rushed to help.
We got in there right as it hit.
The tornado threw Ari over 200 yards onto a neighbor's property.
It's a miracle that she survived and that we did find them. I had to carry Ari about a half mile to the ambulance. Nobody got her out of my arms. I had to get her out of there.
Although most people who get swept up in a tornado never live to tell about it, there are a lucky few who survive. The farthest distance documented that a person was carried and lived to tell about it is 1,307 feet, nearly a quarter mile. This time, only Ari and one of her cousins were the lucky ones. She was rushed to the hospital in nearby Huntsville, Alabama.
I had this horrible feeling because I kept trying to call my daughter, and she would never answer. Probably 10, 12 times I tried to call her. And I was getting very upset, and we got to the hospital, and I saw Ari laying in a hospital bed, and she had a thing around her neck. She was in a back brace. She had all kinds of wires and things. And I was looking at her, and I was like, is this Ari? And I said that. I said, is this my Ari? And there was a lady there, and she said, yes, this is Ari. I know I started screaming. I can remember screaming and falling in the floor. And I said, something's got to be terribly wrong if Jennifer and Shane are not here.
Later, a close family member confirmed Susan's worst nightmare. But she had to overcome her grief to be strong for Ari.
My son came and told me, he said, Mom, he said, you've got to calm down. You've got to quit crying. And if you want to go with Ari, he said, Ari needs you right now.
Ari asked her grandmother about her parents.
I didn't want to ask because I'm like, okay, maybe they're just in another hospital room. Maybe they're on their way or something. And finally, I asked, where's my mom and dad? She's like, Ari, they didn't make it. I found out that my mom, my dad, my baby cousin, and my dad's parents didn't survive.
Ari escaped with a broken collarbone and stitches in her head and back, ultimately spending 3 days in the ICU. But she doesn't attribute her survival to only the doctors.
My dad was holding me so tight that it caused lung damage in one of my lungs. They said that he's probably what saved your life. And so I called my dad my hero.
But her parents were gone, just like in her premonitions.
The dreams that she had had for so many weeks that had reassured her were not gonna happen, had really happened.
They asked me, how do you know that was gonna happen? And I'm just like, cause Jesus told me, he sent it into my dreams.
At her parents' service, a woman approached her who found something else that had miraculously survived the storm.
Something crazy happened. A lady from Tennessee came, and she had a picture. It went through the tornado. It was my mom's picture of me and my dad. And it didn't even have one tear in it.
In a vortex powerful enough to kill 5 people, a photo had traveled more than 80 miles unscathed.
Like it was a miracle that the picture survived through the tornado. I mean, those pictures just fine. I mean, it wasn't wet, it's just weird.
What happens is that the debris gets ingested into the tornado, and then that gets pulled up into the updraft and then carried downwind by the jet stream winds. It could be 100 miles away and ends up in somebody's backyard.
Very little in the tornado's wake could be salvaged. The damage inflicted put the twister at an EF4 rating, 1 level shy of the strongest tornado known to man, with maximum wind speeds of up to 200 miles per hour. Concrete power poles were bent at the base. Metal bolted buildings were wiped out. A 16-mile path scoured the area. At least that's what's recorded by scientists. In a final uncanny event, young Ari describes taking a totally different journey inside the twister.
I believe that I went to heaven after the tornado.
Is it possible she experienced a miracle in the eye of the storm, entering another realm or dimension? Or was she undergoing a near-death experience?
I absolutely believe Ari went to heaven.
What really happened to Ari Hallmark that tragic day? On April 27, 2011, an EF4 tornado ripped through the small towns of Ruth and Arab, Alabama, tearing bolted metal buildings from the ground and killing 5 people. All of them members of the Hallmark family. 6-year-old Ari Hallmark was thrown more than 200 yards in the tornado's vortex and emerged relatively unscathed, believing she went somewhere unusual that day.
I believe that I went to heaven after the tornado.
And you were telling me you were wanting to talk about the angel today?
Yeah.
Okay. Her grandmother called me about trying to help Ari through the trauma that she had been through. I've dealt with children with grief, and I'm not her counselor or her therapist. I'm a friend, I'm a good listener. I don't know about your angel.
And she's really tall, and she has long, blonde, curly hair.
When did you see her first?
When I was going up to heaven.
Did she surprise you? Or?
Mm-hmm.
She did?
Yeah.
Roughly 11% of people who describe having a near-death experience claim they've entered another realm or dimension.
There's an interesting question whether a person actually has to be dying to experience an NDE. In my experience with patients, it doesn't have to be so. They have to be in some kind of traumatic experience. But some people who go through trauma don't have NDEs. But it all depends on the person.
Ari believes she experienced heaven firsthand.
Everything was just not anything like Earth. And I saw Jesus and all the family that passed away, even people that passed away before I was born.
She said, I saw Papa. And of course I started crying because she was referring to my husband, Mike. Ari was only 11 months old when he died, so she does not remember him. So I thought, is this something she's just made up?
Children as young as 3 years old have reported having near-death experiences. Far too young to have any firm concept of death or an afterlife. And yet they describe similar visions and with more frequency than adults.
Children who are faced with natural disasters such as tornadoes experience a certain kind of trauma, perhaps more than adults because they're more open. They haven't learned to be defensive or guarded yet. And so they may be open to experiences of angels, of intuitions, of seeing visions and getting guidance. But you also have to assess, perhaps there's something real there.
I saw my mom in heaven, and she was holding my baby cousin that passed away. And Jesus took Jaden from my mama's arms and was holding him. Then I saw my dad in heaven, and he had hair. He had a disease on earth, and it made him lose all of his hair. And I thought I'd never see him with hair. My angel sent me back down to earth. She's like, Ari, come on, you need to go. It's time to go.
What's so fascinating is that oftentimes they hear a voice and they say, no, it's not your time. You must go back. And so they go back to their bodies and wake up and they remember the voice. And they say, I was sent back because I have more to do in this life. And they have purpose.
Do you remember feeling sad or scared or?
I kind of felt sad that they weren't coming with me, but I actually felt better when I thought, well, I'll see them again.
Is there a rational solution to the afterlife mystery? Or does Ari's experience point to a kind of consciousness that cannot be explained physically?
It's a different story than what a normal 6-year-old might tell you. But I really do believe she was in heaven.
Like most people who undergo an NDE, Ari believes her life has been transformed. She's captured her story in a book, hoping that it can help others who go through traumatic events.
I started on the book when I was in 1st grade. It's about what I saw in heaven, and that when one of your family members dies, that's okay because you're going to see them again. That's not your last time with them.
It's been over 2 years since the tornado struck, and Ari decides to go back to the site of the devastation.
I think it's a really good idea for Ari to go back. She sees how things have changed, and her life has changed as well, and that it's okay. And it gives her some completion, I think.
I know this is where I was found, somewhere in this area.
Where was your mama's house? Is that it over there?
Yes, it's about 200 yards away from here.
The truth about where Ari was that tragic day may never be explained scientifically. But for Ari, she's found the answers she needs to move on.
The tornado doesn't define who she is, but it's a part of her life.
It is really hard for me to imagine that you started out over there and that tornado had you up in the air all the way over there.
Years later, a piece of Ari's past reappears.
Oh, there's something. What's that?
An ornament? Yeah.
Oh, a Christmas
Is it
ornament.
A Christmas ornament. Hold it, okay?
Yeah.
It's not broken.
That's a neat treasure. I'm sure that was one of Maw Maw's. God knows how to do those things.
Those little gifts.
Just when we need them.
Yeah.
We'll have to put that on the Christmas tree this year. Everything can just change totally in one day, and I believe that God had helped me survive through the tornado to tell people that if they've gone through what I've gone through, that that's okay, because you're going to see them again. It may be a while till you see them, but you're going to see them eventually again.